Hey, Big Skinny here. Hope you're having a great day today. I want to welcome you to the Podcheck Presents Casual Conversations with Big Skinny. If this happens to be your first time here, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. Let all your friends and family know. Share the message far and wide. We'd like to get as many viewers as possible. Today, our casual conversation is with Mr. Kenny Lee Lewis. I tell you what, you might know this guy as the bassist slash guitarist from the Steve Miller Band, but the guy is so much more than that, as we find out as we sit down with our casual conversation. We're going to find out that the man is into some gardening, loves to cook, and man, I tell you what, his band, the FrenZ, they have a brand new live stream performance out they put out just last Saturday night, and you can find that on the link down below. We're linking it for you to watch. Some great performance from Mr. Kenny Lee Lewis. Great singer. Great songwriter. I mean, this guy is the most down-to-earth dude you're ever going to meet. In all the years I've done some interviewing, I really enjoyed my conversation with him. Sit back for the next 30 minutes or so and listen in to our casual conversation with Mr. Kenny Lee Lewis. This is Big Skinny. Hope you're doing well today, wherever you happen to be. And I want to take a few minutes today just to tell you about our brand spanking new video podcast, the Podcheck Presents Casual Conversations with Big Skinny. And what I'd like to tell you is, you know, it's not going to be your everyday interview with an artist such as a musician or a famous singer, songwriter, or an actor, actress, that kind of thing. What we'd like to do is get to know these people as people, you know, something outside of their career. So that's what Casual Conversations is all about. You know, if all we ever did was talk about our career every time we talk to somebody, to sit down and talk to somebody, start talking about your job, it would get kind of boring real quick. So, you know, there's so much more to these people that we'd like to find out about. Maybe, so-and-so's a tomato farmer, or he likes to go fishing on the weekends. I mean, when he's not out doing his thing. But, you know, there's so much more to these people than just their job. And that's what we're going to do here at Casual Conversations. We're going to talk to them, get to know them as a person. You know, if you want to find out how so-and-so put this album together, I'm sure there's 1,000 people that he's interviewed with over on YouTube that could tell you, you know, that give you that answer. And we want to do more than that. We want to get to know these people as real human beings. You know, everybody is the same in the end. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you and I do. You know, they have to shop to buy groceries. They have to do things that everyday people do. So why not get to know them as a person? So make sure you join us. We're putting out new content all the time. And that's Podcheck Presents Casual Conversations with Big Skinny. So make sure you like and subscribe to our channel so you can be alerted every time we drop a new video. And I promise you, we got some great interviews coming up in the future that you're not going to want to miss. For God's sake, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you. Have a good one. All right, Big Skinny here, and welcome to the Podcheck Presents Casual Conversations with Big Skinny. And we got a special guest with us today. We've got two Kennys in the studio today. How you doing, Mr. Kenny Lee Lewis?
I'm doing great.
Those that don't know, Mr. Kenny Lee is a session musician. You know, they've done lots of session work in the past. He's the bass player for the Steve Miller Band, and also does some tutorial stuff as well. Plus, has his own band. He travels around and does live streams and all kinds of stuff right now. So, very busy man.
Yep. Well, as busy you can be with the COVID lockdown for the last year.
Are there any new hobbies that you picked up since you've been home, you know, for the last year or so with the COVID?
New hobbies? Well, probably my gardening. I mean, I had to get into it because, you know, of course we weren't touring, and I produced some acts, and I did a couple little gigs here and there. But I mean, most of it was just being sedentary, staying at home, watching, you know, series with my wife, and cooking. You know, cooking I've always been into, but the one that's the newest is probably the gardening, raised bed gardening. You know, vegetables and herbs and stuff.
So, what is your favorite vegetable to grow?
Well, out here in Southern California, well, I'm actually in Central California where I live. We do pretty good with tomatoes and, you know, cucumbers, squash, peppers. I do really well with, you know, lots of herbs and things like that, chives, mint, Thai basil, and all kinds of stuff. So I was growing a lot of herbs and a lot of, I guess what they call nightshades, which are peppers and, you know, eggplants and tomatoes is a nightshade, believe it or not. So yeah, those seem to do really well out here where we are. We have a lot of wind. We have the soil I had to actually amend because we have really hard clay out here. It's volcanic clay. Out here where I live, we have a lot of extinct volcanoes in this valley. And so the soil is, real heavy, dark clay, volcanic soil. And only certain things can grow well out here. Like trees have a hard time out here because they can't get their roots down because of that hard pan clay, especially right in my backyard. Because I actually have a fault that goes right through my
Oh
back.
my gosh.
It's not a active fault, thank goodness. I think it's called the Pietrus Fault or something. But most of the mountains that are in our little valley here, which look like volcanoes, were actually formed in Los Angeles about, I don't know, several million years ago. And after the shifting of the tectonic plates, they've all moved up here from the Los Angeles area.
Wow.
But that being said, they actually are no longer over the active zone of where they were formed, if that makes sense. But our soil has to be amended because it's a little on the dark clay side. So I got to put some sand and some mulch and things like that in it. But it's been fun.
Yeah, my dad, he is a huge gardener. In fact, that was part of our chores when we were growing up, that my dad would stick us out in the garden and he would have us turn the soil. That was his term for,
Yes.
flipping the soil over, trying to equalize the nutrients out again, because he was a, believed in composting heavily. He would take leaves and table scraps, anything he could think of, he'd put in that garden. He would turn that soil over. But, still to this day, the man he's going to be 85 this year and he's still an active gardener, still out there. And I think that's one of the things that keeps him going. But man, I tell you, we can go over there anytime, during harvest season. And, he grows so much. He pretty much lives by himself now. And he grows so much, he can't eat it. He just like giving stuff away. I mean, like potatoes, you go over there and he'll have like, 2 5-gallon buckets full of potatoes wanting to give away because you just can't eat them all. And tomatoes.
We do that here in the little cul-de-sac I live in. We have about 3 or 4 people that grow things, and we're always just leaving stuff on people's doorsteps because we just got to get rid of them. Otherwise they're going to rot. So we're always like, just, hey, I call you up. I just left a big bucket on your porch. And, everybody's always real nice about it. And they usually end up giving it to other people, because sometimes, like at the end of the summer, there's so much harvest, you can't even eat it all. So, but it's fun. We have a great time with their little victory gardens, if you want to call them, around here in the neighborhood. And we all share produce and fruit.
I'll tell you what's so funny about my dad though, is like, he'll grow tomatoes and, we'll say, hey Dad, what variety of tomatoes are these? He'll be like, I don't know, man. They just popped up. He has so many seeds that drop off his tomatoes, and I guess they root in the soil and the next year they just pop up. You don't even grow them, man. They're just like coming up.
Well, yeah, when they rot and they fall off, they just distribute seeds. So you like right now, when I plant my garden, I'll probably put some specific type of tomatoes that I want to put in there, but there'll be a million others that'll just pop up around them from seeds. And, that just happens naturally, which is kind of cool,
Yeah.
kind of like a grab bag. You don't know what you're going to get,
I thought these were cherry tomatoes, Dad.
Yeah.
But no, it's funny.
You're from Fort Worth. A very good friend of mine who went to North Texas State. He's a trumpet player named Daryl Leonard. Played with Stevie Ray Vaughan and a million other people. Has worked with T-Bone Burnett and all those people for many years. He is a tomato growing nut out here in the San Fernando Valley, and he makes so many tomatoes. He has to can them every year, and he makes canned tomatoes. He makes tomato juice. He just goes crazy, and it's just in his backyard of his house.
So, speaking of Fort Worth, we know that Fort Worth holds a very special place in your heart, and tell people about that reason why.
Well, when I was in high school, of course, I wanted to become a rock and roll musician right off the bat. Of course, it was just a dream. And I was living up in Sacramento, which, believe it or not, is called Sac of Tomatoes because it's one of the tomato growing capitals of the breadbasket of the San Joaquin Valley of California, which is pretty funny. So we were known for our tomatoes when we moved there. That's just a coincidence. But anyway, growing up there, I was, just kind of in the junior college. I was actually in the high school, concert orchestra, and I had a band that I was doing parties with and stuff. And a friend of mine who was the lead singer of my band at the time was a couple years in front of me. And he graduated and immediately auditioned for the, it was called the, it was not Mercury, it was the other one, the Venus company of the Broadway musical Hair. And he got the part of Wolf in that, in that show. And so they were playing they wanted to go to Dallas originally, and at that time, and of course at present time too, I'm sure it's a very nationalistic, proud city that doesn't want to ever have anything besmirch anything to do with America and the flag. And if you recall, there was a nude scene in Hair where they draped themselves with the American flag. Now, in New York and San Francisco, it was no big deal, but Dallas just flat out refused to allow Hair to be in Dallas. So the road company, the Venus Road Company, moved it to the Will Rogers Memorial Auditorium in Fort Worth. And when the guitar player's wife got pregnant of the pit band, he needed a sub for about a week. And my friend, pulled for me to come out and do it. And it was an opportunity. My parents were a little leery about it, but they were paying for the ticket and the hotel and everything. So it was like, I just went, come on, man, let me go. I can do it. And my grades were good at the time and everything. I was barely 17. I think I was a junior, maybe a late junior in high school. And sure enough, they flew me out there. I got the audition. They sent me the charts ahead of time, and I was able to, kind of memorize everything. And I got there and I aced it. I actually played the show one night. And I was so young that the band, who were all a bunch of seasoned guys from Boston, were all about my age now. We're just looking at this little kid. They're going like, we can't hang with this guy. Because they wanted to get high and be naughty and everything. And I was just like this little kid. So, they let me stay for the rest of the week and hang out, but they ended up getting another guy. They flew him out that they knew that was on the short list, an older guy. But it was such a great opportunity. And there was a club in town. I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but it was called the Gingerbread House. I think it was what it called. And the band was called the Gingerbread Band. This was 1971. And I befriended these folks, and they let me come every night and sit in with their band and hang out. And of course, I was 17 in a club where, I guess you were supposed to be 21 to drink. I can't remember what the drinking age in Texas in 1971 was, but boy, you want to talk about an experience. If you've ever seen the movie Almost Famous, the story of Cameron Crowe and his beginnings as a writer for Rolling Stone, this experience was very similar to that. And so it freaked me out. I mean, to be around all these really crazy people. I'd never been around New York Broadway people. And, of course, there were gay members that were in the cast. I'd never even been around gay people. I mean, it was just such an experience that I had a great time. And when I came home, my father could tell that I had changed, and he saw a little glint in my eye. Because he always wanted to be a musician himself. He never pulled it off. But he kind of gave me a little wink behind my mom's back, going like, yeah, you had a good time, didn't you? And then there was another club in Fort Worth. I think it was called the Cavern or the Cave, and it was all psychedelic inside. It was all painted to look like a cave or something. And I've talked to some friends of mine from Fort Worth that remember that place. And it was just a psychedelic dungeon, but boy, I had a great time in there. And the music was great. And there were bands in there, I could have seen ZZ Top. I don't know. I can't remember the name of the groups, but there were bands like that playing there when I was going there. But it was like a dream. So, and that's where I first saw Dirty Harry too. I went to the theater, saw Dirty Harry in Fort Worth, and then a hockey team was staying in the hotel where we were at the time. And I'll never forget how rough these guys were. They came in drunk after a game and partying, and there was a fountain. I don't remember. There was an old hotel in Fort Worth that had a fountain in the lobby, a big one. And these guys, I don't know what they did, but they broke the fountain in the lobby, and it leaked all over the carpeting in the lobby. So they had to completely clean out the lobby, and I think they had to close down the hotel while I was staying there because the hockey team drained the fountain into the lobby.
What's really cool is if you tell people that story, about, the Fort Worth days and how you were sitting in playing with the Gingerbread Men and this, they probably thought, man, that guy's on something. He was tripping on something if he thought he was playing with some Gingerbread Men in Fort Worth.
It was actually called the Gingerbread House, and the band was called the Gingerbread Band, and they owned the venue.
That is cool.
I think it was really cool. So that's why they were able to kind of grandfather me in, because I guess they were friends with the cops in the neighborhood or whatever, and they were letting a 17-year-old sit there with their band and and drink and be naughty with, the local gentry.
I'll have to do some history research on that and find out exactly.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's changed. It's changed names, or
I'm sure it has. But this was called the Gingerbread House and the Gingerbread Band at that time.
That is really cool. Yeah, so I'm sure my parents probably know of it. That was 71. I was born in 66, so it was just a little bit before my time. But
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what's cool is your session work back in the day, back in the 70s, mid to late 70s, and then hooking up with Steve Miller Band. Can you tell us how all that took place?
Well, I was my wife Diane Steinberg had a record deal on ABC Dunhill, and at the time she was just my employer. She hired me to be her bass player. I ended up writing songs with her, and I got into the studio scene there through her record. Jeff Picaro and Jay Graydon and all these people were on the record, and they liked my playing. So I got pretty popular pretty fast as a bass player, even though I played both bass and guitar. As you know, I played guitar for Steve for 28 years before I switched over to bass. But at that time, bass was just starting to become very popular because, classic rock had kind of come and gone, and funk was real popular, and then disco was just about ready to hatch around 76, 77. So around 76 is when I started this. I started getting popular, and somehow I ended up in a session. I was playing in a Chitlin circuit band down in Ingle Watts, and a producer that was there heard me playing in the club, and he liked my playing, and he had me play on a session that he booked in the San Fernando Valley at a place called Fidelity Recorders. And a drummer that had been doing some demos there who lived in the neighborhood was a guy named Gary Malaber. And he heard my playing, and he liked my playing. And he started asking me if I wanted to do a demo here and there. And the next thing I know, there was a writer in there who was called Gerard McMahon, and he was signed to Abra Blackwood, to Erwin Mazer, and a guy named Artie Ripp. And Artie Ripp owned the studio. He was the guy that had literally ripped off Billy Joel back in the old days for all of his fortune from the old New York days. So they had come out to California, and that's the bunch I was hanging with. And Gary and I became friends, became writer friends, and he asked me if I wanted to join this Gerard McMahon band they were putting together, which I did. And we did a couple records together. I wrote some songs on that. And eventually we became active writers. And one day we were in Gary's studio writing, and he had played on most of Steve Miller's hits, on the Fly Like an Eagle and, Book of Dreams album, and, just about everything that's on the greatest hits that you buy today from Steve, Gary had played on. And Steve was kind of in a, he'd been in kind of a hiatus. He'd gone through a divorce, and he cleaned up his act and wasn't drinking anymore. And he was kind of like not really creating much. He was just handling his personal life. So he needed some material. So he called Gary when we were mixing some stuff in Gary's garage, and Gary took the call, and he came back after the call, and he says, "Hey, Gary," he said, "Guys, Steve just called. He needs material. He needs a record done by Christmas over Capitol. And do you want me to send him our demos?" And we all just kind of went, "Yeah, okay," because we thought he might do like a song. We had 8 finished masters at the time that we had done on an 80-8 TIAC half-inch 15 IPS machine. We'd done it through a Soundcraft console. We had it sounded pretty good with DBX, and I mean, we were making some really good sounding demos. So we sent him all 8, and come to find out, he wanted all 8. He took all 8 of them because he was that dry. And not only did he like the songs that I had played guitar and bass on the demos, but he liked the masters. So he had a 24-track 2-inch machine, brought on a pickup over to Gary's house, and he transferred our masters onto that 2-inch tape and took it to Capitol. And he just started working on those tapes. And I had already played bass and guitar on just about all those tracks. So in a matter of just a week or so of him accepting the songs, I'm not only a writer on his album, I'm also playing bass and guitar on his album, just by way of transferring. So that's how it started.
So did you get credit for those songs that were on that album?
Oh, yeah. Just go to Abracadabra. You can see them. And there's a picture of me on the back, too.
And so all the publishing rights and stuff, all that is yours as far
Well,
as...
it's funny you mentioned publishing, because Steve's old school. And at that time, his business model was to take all the publishing. like a Berry Gordy act out of Motown or something like that. And I knew that going in, and I knew I could write more songs. So that was a decision I had to make. And in hindsight, it was not a bad decision because the record sold 5 million copies. I made enough royalties where I was able to buy a house and eventually I married Diane, and we became husband and wife, and bought our first house with some of the money that I was making to make the payments from the Abracadabra album. So yeah, I have credits, and it paid very well. So it was one of those old things. It's like 100% of nothing is nothing, but 50% of something is something. And when you retain your writers, you're still getting half of the money that's generated off the copyright.
Yeah, and you got to know that when you join up with somebody that's got a big name like that, and he's extending the olive branch and saying, "Hey, here's the deal."
Yeah.
I mean, there's publicity there. It's a good deal. I mean, you can't balk at it.
Yeah, I mean, I just had to make a business decision based upon practicality.
Yeah. So, we know that the touring, there was a lot of touring back in the day with going overseas and traveling around the United States.
Mm-hmm.
How much has touring changed for you over the years as far as the amount of prep you have to do and, just being able to, because most of the time you guys would tour, you'd be gone for months at a time, right?
Right.
And now, is it easier for you guys to tour now where you're just gone maybe a couple of days and you're back?
Yeah, Steve was, he's been in the business, 55 years or more. And he just got tired of the way he was touring. And so he got with David Gilmour one day, because they're pretty good friends from Pink Floyd. And David shared with him the concept of life surfing, if you will, and trying not to make your career so freaking hard on you, And one of them was private jets. The other one was having your own private bus. And the other one was not playing too many nights in a row and staying in really, really nice hotels. And that was kind of just a thing that Steve just had to make a decision to invest in if he was going to continue to tour. And he made those decisions. And so I came on. The first tour we did for Abracadabra, it was kind of loose. It was more like the old style, with just like a straight bus, not a coach, with just everybody in a bus. We stayed in okay hotels. We played a lot of nights in a row back to back. But around the time he took a break from the band that he had at the time in 1987, and he did a jazz album. And when he did the jazz album, he went out to go tour and support that. And he used those musicians, and they were all guys from Minneapolis and Madison, Wisconsin. And his old buddy, Ben Sidran, who had co-written Space Cowboy with him, was the one who was producing him and also providing the rhythm section. So I had a break from 87 to 93 where I was raising my first kid. I was doing other things in LA, studio work and other stuff at guitar and amplifier corporations and stuff. So I wasn't in the band for a while. And in 93, when I came back, he had put those things into place that I just discussed. And it was pretty cushy. I mean, we got on there. We had great coaches, great hotels. We were flying everywhere. He was flying in a private jet. So all he had to do was just, take a taxi, ride to his jet, get on board. He didn't even go through security, nothing. Get on board, fly real quick, go to the next town, get off, get into a taxi, and go to his hotel. Boom. No airport, nonsense, no waiting around. And so he changed his lifestyle like that. And even though we didn't really necessarily travel in the private jet all the time, although we did from time to time when we had to, it's a pretty relaxed way of touring. And I've been very spoiled with it. And even though we took a break from 2001 to 2004, we haven't really taken much of a break since 93, except for that one I just mentioned. But pandemic came, and it just automatically put us on hold. So for 1 year now, I mean, we have not done a gig.
That's crazy. Now, I've seen some acts that have like these, like Richard Marx, we saw him a few years ago, and he comes in and he has like a guitar, and that was pretty much his set, a guitar. And, they had a piano there. I'm sure he didn't bring that in, but they had it rented or something. But as an artist, do you guys still travel with the same amount of gear that you did back in the day, or has it been scaled down to where you can travel with it a little easier?
Yeah, Steve bought his own truck, and he carries all of his own stuff. And we usually use a sound company that we contract. more likely Claire Brothers or somebody like that. And they bring the PA, and that's in another truck. And we just pay them to bring their truck. But we bring all our own amps and guitars and, and drums, all that stuff, and staging. We bring our own staging. Steve designs a custom stage about every 2 years. He's kind of like, GM and Chrysler. He, changes the body style a little bit, but it's still basically the same stage about 2 years in a row. And then we have another new stage. So, but yeah, we bring all that. We try to make it as collapsible and as portable as possible. But yeah, we're still traveling with all the same stuff. Now, somebody like Ed Sheeran, who just shows up with an acoustic guitar and a looper, he could fill a stadium doing that and make all the money. And I just sit there and go like, wow, that's really cool, man. I mean, he doesn't have to work so hard because he can make a fortune just doing a couple months of touring, and he's done for the year, Now, we don't tour a lot. We're not like the Doobie Brothers or ZZ Top or one of these other bands that are just out 300 days a year. We're usually out for about 150 days a year, about half that. And, the amount of money that, we're guaranteed makes a pretty good living for the band and crew, which is about 25 to 30 people, depending upon who we're doing. And also depending upon whether we have a big opening act. Like last couple of years, we had Peter Frampton, we had Journey and Tower of Power and, and other people. And, those were even bigger shows because they had to bring all their trucks too and all their crews. So, but when we're out just doing an evening with kind of tour, where it's just us and maybe a local opening act, it's pretty trim. I mean, we have about four buses. We have about 4 buses, and we have 1 truck. That's us, and then we subcontract the sound company, and then maybe the merchandise truck. So that's about it. Maybe 7 trucks and 6 buses or something.
So it's not near like it was back in the old days when you guys had just the caravan just going from place to place.
Yeah. I mean, it's still quite a lot of stuff, but it's when
Scale down as much as you can.
Yeah, when he was touring with the Eagles and with the Dead back in the 70s and 80s and stuff, I mean, God, yeah, it was just tons of stuff. But it's pretty trim now.
Yeah, and I tell you what, so much more can be done with computers these days that couldn't have been done. The lighting systems they have nowadays, just the technology is amazing.
Yeah, the consoles, 3 feet or 4 feet, and, it does everything. It's
a lot slimmer. Hey, tell us a little bit about your cooking, man. All this cooking you got going on during the pandemic.
Well,
any cool recipes to share?
I've always been a chef, and I actually started cooking on the road when I was a kid. My first tour, I was 18 when I went out, and the keyboard player was a couple years older than me, and he was a pretty good cook, and he was showing me all kinds of stuff. And then I brought back a girl from that tour from the South, and she showed me all kinds of Southern cooking stuff. And then I just kept going. And then after I got married and had kids and everything, the kids got into it, and so we used to do a lot of cooking with the kids, and it was fun. When we had, of course, our big holiday events. And Diane's from the South, and of course her family were all great cooks, so I learned a lot. A lot of great recipes from her family, and I just kept going. And then as I toured and I went to more exotic places and started eating Indian and Thai food, and Indonesian food and Japanese food, I started learning the techniques of doing all that stuff. And of course, I always knew Mexican food because I grew up in California. But some of the barbecue and Tex-Mex styles and things that I found out from touring. I mean, we never did brisket out here. We did tri-tip, and it's like a different kind of a cut and a different way of cooking it, but now I know how to do a really good Texas brisket, so once in a while I'll do that. So and plus I'm a foodie, I'm a Libra, and we love food, and, I mean, just look at me. I mean, it's like, I'm not one of these, Keith Richards, skinny dude, so I enjoy life. I enjoy music. I enjoy, food and art and all that stuff. So, and travel. And so I just brought that home with me. And so over COVID, there was not much to do. So I really went nuts, and I started doing a lot of these dishes, and I was putting them up on Facebook, and people were going crazy, going like, well, when are you going to have this cookbook? And, you got to have a show, and blah, blah, blah. And so in 1990, way back in 1990, a friend of mine named Scotty Page, who played sax with Pink Floyd, he and I had a band called Hang Dynasty, and he got an idea to do a TV pilot show, which would be a cooking show with rock stars. And we also had a house band to play along with those guys. And we did a pilot for Fox called Rock and Roll Kitchen. If you go on YouTube, you can find it. There's a a theme song. Get on up. You don't know what you're missing. Rock and Roll Kitchen. It's Mike Finnegan actually sang the lead vocal on that, who played on Electric Lady Land with Jimi Hendrix. So he's originally from Kansas. But anyway, you can go and see that. And so that was a pilot. So I always had that idea in my mind. We never sold the show. The Food Network hadn't come yet. It was 1990, 91. I can't remember. But that's a show that I'm working on that I'm hoping to get some funding for soon and have rock celebrities on to do cooking. Because most of us that are this age now, and I'm over 60 now, and most of the other guys are either that or even over 70 now that are in the classic rock world, have cleaned up their acts. They're no longer chasing skirt and looking for drugs after the gig. They're looking for, fine wine and fine dining, and a late night restaurant, in New York City or wherever we are. And that's kind of the lore that we have when we're on the road, is just, great food and wine and sitting around and just talking and stuff, And so those guys, a lot of my friends that are in the biz, they all have become chefs. And if you've ever watched, Daryl's House, of course, he does that a little bit of that. Yeah. But this show that I'm talking about would be real recipes and real chefs and real serious stuff. And then we will play a live performance as a part of the show, but it will not be the main focus. Like Daryl's House is mostly about the playing. We would be more about the cooking and maybe play a little. So that's something that I'm working on, and it's called This Kitchen Rocks. And, just still looking for an investor to write that check, because I want to do it first class, just like, we talked about earlier about life surfing. Yep. I want to fly everybody first class, put them in a great hotel and when we're filming, and, take care of them. And then they can talk about their records, their tours, they can promote themselves on the show, and as well as perform. And we would have specific, unique performances on that show that would become a part of the brand of the actual cooking website.
Right before the pandemic hit, me and my wife had an idea. It was one that me and my wife are both foodies. She's a little Mexican girl, and man, she loves Mexican cuisine. And we can show you just about every Tex-Mex restaurant here in the Fort Worth area, because we probably tried them all. But so we were gonna do a podcast, a video podcast. We were gonna go into restaurants. We were gonna interview the people that were there at the restaurant. We were going to, grade the food, give it a rating. And then we were going to talk to guests and stuff. We were going to call it Two Cowtown Foodies. And we were going to do like a video podcast with that. Well, then COVID comes, and boom, the whole thing's just, the whole thing's gone. The idea's gone. You can't get out and do anything. So we're looking at reviving that idea. And, we went to a little restaurant the other day. We thought we'd give it a little test run here next day or so, just kind of play around with it, see what kind of viewership we can get on it. But we're both foodies too. We love it.
Well, I'm also becoming a novelist. I have a book on Amazon called Skeleton Dolls, and Children of the Tower is the first of a trilogy that I'm writing. And it's a crazy sci-fi kind of thing, sort of like, Stephen King meets Dan Brown meets something else, and people can go find that if they want. Kenny Lee Lewis, Skeleton Dolls on Amazon. It's both in hardback and also Kindle. I'm actually looking for an agent now for the second sequel, and talking with agents right now, trying to get them to sign me on. And there's that going. And then I'm also working on a teaching website, which will be called FrenZ, FRETFRENZ, fretfrenz.com. And I was just working on that just before I did this interview with you. I'm just finalizing all the fine tuning on that, and that'll launch hopefully the next week. And people can go to fretfrenz.com, and it's a 24/7, lesson site. You can also go to my YouTube channel, Kenny Lee Lewis on YouTube, and I have a lot of performance sort of like lesson things on there. They're kind of like master classes, but they're free, and it's just to sort of entice you to see if you want to take more lessons from me on my site. But that's what's been going on the side during COVID, is getting my lesson site really up and running, which hopefully will be, like I said, the next week.
As we wrap it up, tell us a little about your live stream FrenZ the other night that you did. People can find it on YouTube. Yeah,
that's my local band here that's called FrenZ. And you can go to frenzmusic.com, FRENZ music.com, and you can see what we're up to. And it's a classic rock conglomerate of a bunch of my buddies I grew up with in San Joaquin Valley. And we met out here in San Luis Obispo, where we all live now. and Los Osos. So it's kind of we have kind of like 5 cities out here. We're all real close. And, we play around here locally when there's no COVID pandemic, of course, but we do original material as well. And so it's, a bunch of older guys. We're not trying to get a record deal or make a big hit record, but we have a lot of fun with this band. And we play all the great stuff that we all grew up with. And, of course, me being a Hendrix and a Page, Jeff Beck, and, Terry Kath and, the Allman Brothers. I mean, we do all this stuff, the Guitar Hero type music. And we learn all the parts, all the guitar harmonies, everything, Steely Dan tunes, and then we write originals. We throw those in the mix, and we play around here locally, and we just have a ball. So that's last Saturday we did one. It's up on my Kenny Lee Lewis YouTube channel. You can go there, and it's there now. I haven't edited it yet. It's raw with all the breaks and everything, but eventually I'll edit it and make it sound a little better. But if you want to watch it, just go to YouTube, Kenny Lee Lewis on Kenny Lee Lewis channel on YouTube, and you can see it. It's about a 2.5 hour video, and you can just watch it segments if you want. But it was done on a great stage, great lighting, and it was just a ball. It's the first time we played in front of a live audience for exactly a year.
Well, I did watch some of that the other night, and I was really impressed with it. The Steely Dan that she was doing, the Dead Man's Hand. That's
one of my tunes.
That's one of your originals.
Yeah, that was about when I cut my hand from like here all the way up my little finger and cut all the nerves and arteries. This was about 7 years ago. And it was a wild experience. And I was able to go to Cedars-Sinai in LA and have the guy reconstruct my hand and get it all working again and get my nerves kind of hooked up, except for my pinky, which is still numb. But I wrote a song about it, and that's what you're talking about.
Well, I enjoyed it. So I tell you what, if you want some good music, check it out for sure. Well, Mr. Kenny Lee Lewis, we thank you for joining us today. Thank you for sitting in and just, sharing with us some personal stuff about your life and your music. Yeah. We appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, thank you very much, and enjoy Diane's interview.
we will do that, man, and just let her know that we can't wait to talk to her as well.
Okay, she'll be hooking up with you in just a minute.
Thank you, sir.
All right, bye-bye.
This is Big Skinny, and you've been listening to the Podcheck Presents Casual Conversations with Big Skinny. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. Hey, we'll see you.